So, and when I got back to BYU, I like put them on my very top shelf in the back and everything, you know. But one day, it was like second week into January, I decided to start reading Goodbye, I Love You by Carolyn Pearson, and it was very good. I read it in it was about 3 days, and I was probably 3 pages from the end of the book. It was just talking about this time when her husband was almost dead. It was the week before he died, and she was just totally stressed out, and her Relief Society president came over to see if they needed help, and she said, I could use some people to do some yard work, and then the Relief Society president came over later that day, apparently couldn't find anyone, and was cleaning up her whole yard with her husband or something like that. And it was just like that, the compassion of I always have a bit of get emotional for compassionate things like that, you know, just when someone's really Christ-like love and real charity. So that's sort of, usually I would just like drip a tear or something because it was so nice of her, but I dripped a tear and then another one, and then another one, and then I was just like bawling, and I was sitting in my room and I was like, my roommate is gonna walk in on me just like bawling my eyes out, and so I just threw on my coat. It was middle of January, freezing cold, like 11 o'clock at night, and went outside hoping no one would see me on my way out, and they didn't. And I just went and sat on this spot, on the hill next to my dorm. I just cried for it was at least an hour and a half. Just biggest tears you've ever known, and like my nose was just like, and it was a flood, and I was just
So what do you think that was about? That was obviously more than just, I read a story of charity.
Well, it was, the book sort of set me off, but then that hour and a half was just total catharsis, crying out everything, you know, that had sort of built up emotionally about being gay my whole life and everything. And it was after that I was just cool with myself. I don't know exactly what happened, but I just cried it all out, and then I was just like, you know, I don't know what I believe in with the church, and I don't know how this is going to work out with BYU or my family or my friends or anybody, but I am all right with being gay, and I don't feel a need to change. And so that was like my biggest moment, because it was after that. After that night, I was ready to come out, and it was probably a week after that I, you know, called my first friend and came out, and then, so that book, it sort of just set me off into my really big moment. As for the other books, there's one, In Quiet Desperation. I read the first part by Stuart Mattis's parents, and it was pretty good, but then I got into the second half by Ty Mansfield, and I'm sorry, but it was just too much. It was too preachy, and I couldn't.
Totally agree.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Benny?
Totally agree. That was the first book that I read to like supplement this like tragedy I was going through, like something to like save me. And so people had, you know, recommended it and said, you have to read this. If you are gay and you are Latter-day Saint, you have to read this book. And I was just like you. The first like few chapters, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so helpful. And there's so many people, you know, and there's so many people within the church that are so great and helpful and compassionate about it. I got to the last half, and I just felt like they moved in this they took this preachy turn, and then they just started constructing how you are going to live your life out from here on. It's good that you came out. It's great that you're gay, but now you are not to act on it. And then I felt like it did this full circle. It kind of like led me to believe that they were going this direction. Then all of a sudden it came back, and I was like, and then I didn't finish it.
Yeah.
I have a question about that book. Okay, so when I was at BYU is when that whole incident happened.
Oh.
With
the guy that
Yeah, well, because their daughter, Catherine, was in our music dance theater program. So it happened so it was the brother of somebody that was in our class.
Wow.
So we're all, you know, we all have.
Have you read it?
No.
Oh.
But it was about, we just heard, oh, he killed himself on the steps of a church, like how dramatic and scary and how awful, and then, okay, so I haven't read it, so I want to get the truth on the whole thing. Did they really say, what we got from the gist of it is that the parents made a public statement or something, well, at least he didn't act out on his
Yeah,
beliefs.
and that was hard
And
to read.
that was like the most shocking thing I think I'd ever heard, and everybody, we thought that was the most horrible thing that somebody could say. But I remember getting those kind of messages growing up, and I'm like, that's why people are killing themselves.
Yeah.
And to add to that, his parents, the Mattises, they still run this little family home evening thing the first Monday of every month, for people who are gay. And I've only been there once, just right before I finished my freshman year. But I heard a lot of people saying that their parents still sort of pushed that whole, we're so glad that he just didn't act on it thing, still after.
Yeah, I think that's where it still is, though. Yeah. I mean, I'm so grateful. We were talking about, I'm so happy that it's in that spot now where, that people can come out and that they've moved from saying, like, no, you're not gay, you'll get married, you're not meeting the right girl, blah, blah, blah. But now, it's like in that book, like, the mother of him was just like, this has got to stop, like, and it was so inspiring, and you're listening to her, and she's like, no, this is my son, and it's changed now. I'm not just going to listen to what's being dictated to me, like, this is my son who's no longer with us. You're really connected there, and then they go into this, there's new hope now. You can be gay, you can even come out and you're warded so you're gay, you just cannot act on it, period. I mean, you just didn't have to live this life of, I guess, celibacy, or not even do the things that like straight Latter-day Saints can do. I went to my bishop and I was like, I was so dedicated. I said, fine then I want to be able to I'll hold his hand, we'll make out, there'll be none of this Levi loving, all this stuff that like straight Latter-day Saints are not supposed to be doing.
Right.
And he's just like, you can't.
Right.
Even holding hands you can't. So.
And I've heard a couple times recently from like church leaders and stuff. They're asked about homosexuality and they say, well, homosexuals are just held to the same standard as everyone else who's single in the church. If you're single, you got to be celibate, and that just makes me so angry because you're right. Like, if you're a heterosexual single, you're allowed to date and you're allowed to kiss people and whatever. But if you're gay, then you just have to.
Nothing.
Yeah,
no.
You have to.
You can verbalize it.
Yeah, you have to.
You have $10 million, but you're not allowed to spend it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think they're kind of getting themselves in a kind of a catch-22 where now they're starting to say, okay, so you're born that way, so you can't change it.
Yeah.
Well, then what are the ramifications of that? Like, if God made you that way, then everything else kind of doesn't make sense.
I don't think they believe that God made it. In fact, I'm positive. They don't believe that God sent us that way. It's something happened. They believe you're born that way. Something happened. There was too much estrogen. Testosterone.
Well, if it has nothing to do with you, then that would be God.
Right. But they're saying though that you were sent. God sent your spirit down a certain way. But then, based off of the choices of your mother, or there was something happened, or something chemically happened. So therefore, they treat it. There's still something wrong. Right.
But that's still not your choice. So that would mean that was God's plan.
I don't think they look at it that way, but that's what makes sense.
Well, if it's not your choice.
I have to say, though, I've been in the place thinking, oh, okay, that's celibate. Okay, that's a good solution. Because I think the issue for the church is it's very damaging to their paradigm. I mean, it really is. What are they going to do now with, eternal marriage and everything that kind of sits at the crown of all this doctrine, right? Yeah, and so what do you do with that? And so I think that this is kind of their best attempt to say, and I don't want to make excuses, but this is their best attempt to say, we'll try and work you in. Right. We're just not sure doctrinally how to do that. And I've been in that place, but